Hello everyone, this is Emily speaking from Couch English, channel dedicated to practical business English. And if you listen to us, you also know that I'm talking quite a lot about business, about work, about leadership and communication. So something related not only to English, but obviously to business and our daily work routine. What I would like to discuss today is a topic a bit related to another one that I was mentioning within the last webinars and podcasts. As I was talking about burnout today, I'm going also to discuss the topic of stress interventions. And probably first, I would even mention what that is. So if it's about stress interventions, these are some kind of short, immediate activities, some kind of the remedies that we can apply right here and right now if we need to manage pressure, if we need to manage stress. When I'm going to talk to you about those stress interventions, I will also discuss something what is for me, at least like personally or maybe like subjectively, very strongly connected with the way how we can manage stress and even the methods that we can apply. That's why I would mention something like our internal predispositions to stress, because I really believe that it can occur that during the same situation, in the same environment, we're going to find two people. So the situation that can cause to some extent the pressure is going to be identical, I would say, but to some extent, we're going to be able to observe that two different people can react to the same situation in a completely different way, despite the fact that the level of stress or the level of pressure should be exactly the same. But the thing is that we have some kind of inherited predispositions, some kind of the traits that makes us be more susceptible, I would say, to stress. And out of those ones that probably you can see here, you can even have that kind of the thought, kind of the reflection, if any of those particular traits or qualities refers to you. I believe that each of us, or maybe hopefully not, can find there's some kind of the quality that somehow we identify with. And depending on the situation, depending on the person with whom we have contact, depending on the environment, it might really occur that some of those qualities, they will become more visible because of that certain circumstances. I can probably imagine that if I was the person who is over accountable, it would mean for me that if I'm in the environment of people who not necessarily take accountability for something, taking this ownership is not going to be like natural or typical even for them. Even if in the project we're working as a group, as a team, being over accountable, I would really feel stressed if other people wouldn't invest the same level of accountability, of ownership to the tasks that we have to all do. So in that particular situation, again, I believe that I would be pretty stressed because I wouldn't observe exactly the same approach as my own is. On the other hand, probably if I was the person uh, mm, who has that kind of the perfectionism inside. And somebody would tell me, like, you know what, just do it. Just execute that kind of the task. It doesn't have to be ideal. It doesn't have to be perfect. We just have to do it, let's say, like enough. It just has to be sufficient. Then again, if I'm the person who is perfectionist, my thought would be, oh my God, how can I do it? How can I complete the task, not perfectly, no ideally, no for 100% of what I can deliver in that kind of the task, but I can just leave it, let's say, on the level of 70 or 80%. Being perfectionist, it would be extremely difficult for me not to polish the task like really, really perfectly. And the reason why I'm mentioning that is because it can probably again happen that in exactly the same situation, depending on those internal predispositions, it can occur that certain types of the techniques, like stress management techniques, they will apply to some of us, and exactly the same technique will not be appropriate for a person with any other trait, with any other quality. And I decided to place quite a typical example. So let's imagine that we have to run a presentation, probably very important audience, because let's say that it would be the board. Let's also imagine that the presentation would be run in English, which wouldn't be our mother tongue. So probably that kind of the pressure, board, very important presentation, public speech, obviously, saying something in English. Well, I can imagine that it could generate quite high level of tension, stress, or even fear. And probably if I was preparing myself for that kind of the presentation and I was thinking about that kind of the presentation, I could consider different kind of the techniques. And one of them would be related to practicing the presentation out loud, sorry, in a safe environment. So in front of my friend, let's say. Another technique can be connected with the fact that I'm just imagining the whole way how I'm running the presentation. So not even practicing, but I'm really initiating my imagination. I'm entering the stage, I start the presentation, everybody's looking carefully at me, and finally I'm finishing the presentation, everybody's like really impressed. So I'm just doing some kind of visualization. On the other hand, I can simply avoid thinking about the presentation until the very last moment, or I can focus just before the presentation on some kind of breathing techniques. So if you could already have that kind of the thought, which of those particular techniques could be applied personally to you? And I can imagine that some of you, you're going to say, well, yeah, practicing out loud, yes, that could work. But I can again also imagine that some of you would mention, well, the second one, visualization, this positive approach, yeah, it could work. And still, I'm pretty sure that some of us would say, yeah, I'm just not thinking about it because, like, why should I even think about some kind of the presentation? I'm just like, no, entering the stage and that's it. I'm not thinking about it, not to stress myself, in fact. And the same. Probably some of you are going to say, yes, breathing just before the presentation to calm down. Yes, it would be the perfect solution for me. And it shows again that depending on our personality, of course, depending also on our experiences, on our moment in life, but depending on the personality, on our traits, on our predispositions, it might really happen that those different kind of the techniques would be perfect and fantastic for some of us, and exactly the same technique, no, it wouldn't be applicable for another person. As you have here that kind of the example, perfectionist would have to practice out loud the presentation or parts of the presentation with some kind of the repetition. So I'm practicing some slots of the presentation, some bunches of the presentation, and then practicing, moving to another part, practicing, and so on. For the person who is impatient, it wouldn't work because that would be simply too much. So in that case, probably some kind of short focus practice session, it would work, but a short one, immediate, the most important aspects of the presentation being practice, that's it. And if I had imposter syndrome, so I would have some kind of doubts in my own skills and knowledge. Probably practicing, of course, could work, but still it wouldn't be enough because I would need some kind of the self-esteem. I mean, higher level of the self-esteem. I would need some kind of the appreciation, and I would need the evidence that in the past I did some kind of the presentations and they were really good. So I would need to convince myself that I can really manage that. And for the person who has imposter syndrome, I believe that it would be something that could work. Mm, and moving right now to another part. So bringing you from the predispositions to also some kind of stress interventions, I will just remind slightly and shortly how about the definition. So again, short stress interventions, they are some kind of the remedies, they are some kind of the tools for here and now. I'm stressed. And of course, normally, I also need some kind of long-term practice to keep myself in good shape, in good mood, in good health, obviously. But here and now, sometimes because of extremely high level of stress or some kind of uncomfortable situation or new situation, I really need some kind of the techniques that within few moments, seconds, or minutes, they're going to bring me back to the ground and give me some higher level of calm. What can it be? I would say that if it is about those stress interventions, they can be, of course, divided into different kind of the categories. It can be about box breathing, which could mean, among the others, because there are different kind of the techniques, but it could mean that I'm inhaling, let's say like for 4 seconds, pausing, exhaling, and 4 seconds, 4 seconds, 4 seconds, 4 seconds. So I'm calming down my body. It can be about progressive muscle release, which would mean that I'm tensing and relaxing my muscles. So I'm really concentrating on my body, or something what, let's say, tricks a little bit my brain would be cold water on wrists or face. Why it works? The reason is simple, because then instead of focusing on stress, I'm focusing on my body, and my body has to relax. It works in that kind of the way that water, especially if we're going to change the temperature of the water, it triggers the calm reflex. If it is about another one, it's about yawning intentionally, which means that again, if I'm yawning intentionally, I'm somehow causing my body to relax. It activates the vagus nerve. So because of that, again, I'm concentrating on my body and I can move on. It's not only about physiological, but it's also about the emotional stress interventions. I can do the simple thing. I know I'm stressed, so I can just name it. I can name my emotions. I can say, I'm afraid. I'm anxious. So I can name my emotions. I can even do it out loud, just to myself, of course, or to the other people. And usually, because of that, because of the fact that I'm just going to let it go, so I'm going to name those emotions, I should like really calm down a little bit. I can also do the midi body scan. So I'm scanning my body and I'm asking myself, where do I feel what? So, for example, if it is about anxiety, it can happen that somehow I have a pain in my stomach and I'm just concentrating on that, where I feel something in my body, and that's how I'm distracting my brain again. I can ask myself, what am I missing? What do I need right now to be more conscious, to be more aware? And I can think of some kind of comfort memory. It's the same as we have the comfort food. So some kind of the food from the past. So for example, my granny, she was preparing some delicious meal, and I'm just reminding myself, yeah, some time ago I was eating that kind of the meal, or I was in some kind of beautiful place with my family. So some kind of comfort memory which brings us back to the past, and that's how we feel safe again. It's also about cognitive stress interventions. It can be about cognitive reframing. So instead of telling to myself, oh, there is such high level of pressure, I'm rather going to say it in a positive way. I'm trying to find something positive, something mobilizing. So instead of saying, well, there is a high level of pressure, it will be really, really hard, I'm saying, okay, it's about energy. It will give me the energy. And that's how I'm changing my mindset. I can ask myself the question, is it fact or my interpretation? What is happening right now? So if I'm afraid of being judged, I'm saying, okay, is it fact that people are judging me right now, or is it right now my interpretation? I can think a little bit about that particular situation happening here and now from the time perspective. So what will it mean in 3 years from now? Probably nothing. I can as well visualize the best possible outcome. So instead of thinking about some kind of black scenario, I can ask myself, okay, what could be the best? What could be the best possible outcome that can happen? For example, if I'm going to give the presentation. And finally, the ones that I really like, sensory based. So I'm concentrating on my senses, which means that I can, for example, pick 5 things that I can see. So I'm just looking around and thinking, okay, I can see that, I can see that, I can see that. It can be about the colors. So I can tell to myself, let me find, let's say, 3 yellow things in my room. I can touch something with a clear texture and focus on how it feels. So I'm just touching, and then again, I'm concentrating and distracting my mind, my brain. I can pause and notice 3 things that I can hear. I can close my eyes for a moment and just separate different kind of the sounds. Then I'm going to be more conscious and more aware. And instead of focusing on stress, I'm again distracting a little bit myself from thinking about some kind of difficult situation. And I can also combine it. So I can execute some kind of grounding technique. Among the others, I can again think about, let's say, those 3 yellow things, Then I can move to thinking about to seeing, for example, another important issues for me. I can concentrate on hearing something, on touching. So generally, I'm concentrating on my senses. So all of those techniques, they can of course work here and now, but again, it will really depend. So we have to experiment a little bit and we have to adjust the certain technique, the certain method to ourselves, to our needs, to the certain moment, and just practicing, experimenting, and checking what is going to be valuable. If you like the podcast and probably the other ones, you can of course follow us, because if you're going to enter our website, you will find there not only the webinars, the podcasts, and some shorts, but you can also find there different kind of sources of inspiration with some kind of the articles, with some kind of the ebooks. So I guess I can recommend it. And of course, if only you wish, you can contact us and check what else we can offer to you. Thank you very much, and I'm wishing you a wonderful day, obviously.